Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Aspiring Adult podcast. My name is Alexandra Hayek, and I'm your host. Today, we have my friend Jade, the second Jade on this podcast. Um, we met in like third grade,
A while ago.
so it's been a while. Jade, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yes. Hi, my name is Jade. Like Alex said, we've known each other for a hot minute. Um, I am currently finishing up my engineering degree, my civil engineering degree, and am just going through life, vibing, doing whatever.
Yeah, she's in Canada also.
Yes, Canada.
So
Forgot to mention that. I am in Montreal right now. I was in Houston with Alex for a while, but moved to Montreal for my studies.
yeah, and you've loved it, right?
Oh my God, I love it. It's a great city, honestly. Like I know it's a little bit cliche because everybody says this, but it's like one of the cities, especially as a woman, where you can feel like just completely safe. Like there's no ambiguity whatsoever. You can walk in the streets like in the middle of the night with like any type of outfit and even like people are so nice. Like everybody's so welcoming. Like it's just I love it, honestly. It's so great.
I guess the Canadian stereotype is true that.
Yeah.
Okay, so you mentioned that you are studying civil engineering. So can you tell us a little bit about why or how you came to civil engineering and why do you decided um, that you wanted to do that?
Yeah, well, it was kind of a hard decision for me. Well, especially like when I was younger, I had no idea what I wanted to go in until like maybe like what is it? Maybe 11th or 12th grade, I think, where you actually had to make like that decision of like submitting like applications through colleges and universities. But I think what pushed me a lot was everybody in my family was very engineering oriented. And my dad, I mean, he's not civil, he's mechanical, but my grandfather and like I think his father as well were civil engineers, and it was just like a whole thing. Like I don't know. I felt like it was kind of like the only thing that I could do. And especially since I love math, even if I'm not great at it, I love math. And it was just kind of the only field that I was seeing myself going into. I mean, it's kind of especially when you're younger, it's really hard to have like do make that decision that will impact kind of like your whole life.
Hmm, yeah.
And going into like a 4-year diploma or 4-year bachelor's degree where you're gonna be like just doing this intensively
Yeah.
and going hopefully going with it for the rest of your life, it's
So did you decide first engineering and then civil, or did you decide or was civil engineering the only one that you had really thought about?
Well, I mean, looking at schools, it was kind of still like in between. I felt like engineering was cool, but there was nothing really speaking to me except civil. At one point, there were some things that I saw that were pretty interesting that were like dual degrees with architecture and civil engineering. But I didn't end up doing that because I think that I would have died in the process of it from what I've been told about architecture.
Yeah. It's like a lot. I mean, both degrees are a lot, you know.
Yeah,
Um,
but
and I mean,
mm,
you do a lot of fun stuff. It's slipping my mind. The club that you're a part of, I don't know if you want to talk about.
yeah, well, I mean, it's a really big part of my university experience, but right now I'm a part of a civil engineering club, and we are called the Concrete Tobogan Club, basically, and our goal is to make a toboggan. It sounds stupid saying it like that, but it's not actually a toboggan. It's more of like a really big bobsleigh, I guess. And everything like you have like skis that touch the ground and like basically they're made out of concrete from scratch. and you have like a rolling cage made out of metal, et cetera. And it's like it's a really big part of like my university experience because that's basically where I met like all of my engineering friends basically. Like it opens up a lot not only for like social aspects but like later on like internships or even jobs, like because a lot of, especially, well, I don't know how it is in the States, but at least in Canada and in Quebec, it is like everybody basically does some types of clubs or like competitions or stuff like that in engineering. And so everybody has this type of like networking, and people will, like, if they know that you've done these competitions, they will be more attracted towards hiring you, for example, because
Yeah.
they know you have that like not only like social aspect, but you have also like, for example, the design or like the thinking, like actually doing like intensive competitions for a few days type of mentality, like.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Like you said, it probably teaches you a lot of skills that you're not necessarily gonna have in like not like soft skills is what they call them, right? Like
Yeah, yeah.
necessarily stuff that you need to learn in the classroom because everybody do that at one point. Um, and it makes a lot of sense. And I know that you have a lot of fun because you post pictures all the time. A lot, like a lot of fun. You guys go like everywhere. You like
Yeah, no, it's
America.
so fun because basically the competition, it's actually like the longest going engineering competition in Canada. So it's been going on. I think last year was the 50th. So
Wow.
it's been going on for 50 years and it's like nationwide. So my first year we were supposed to go to Calgary, but it got canceled because of COVID.
Oh, okay.
But the year after, we went to British Columbia, so that was nice. And then last year, we went to St. John's in Newfoundland.
Wow.
Yeah, pretty cool.
That's where is it this year? Or have you already gone? Sorry, I messed up.
No, no, no. It's in the next one is gonna be in January, and it's in Montreal this year.
Oh, so you don't have to go very far.
Exactly. I know the city.
Yeah. Um, that's awesome. So I don't know if like I mean going all the way to Canada and doing all these amazing things, like I'm not sure if younger or you could tell me if younger Jade imagined herself or like doing all this. So what is the thing that has most surprised you about kind of where you're at in your life right now?
Well, I mean, as someone who traveled a lot when, like, while I was young, like, I was like hopping from country to country all the time. So I don't think I'm very much surprised of living like in this whole new, like, like the whole new country and like doing my own stuff and being far away from like family or old friends. Like, I think that was always kind of like, not the goal, but that was always like expected.
Right.
But I don't know. I mean, I think I would hope that young me would be proud of where I am right now. Like, especially like where I'm at, like having my apartment, having all my friends, doing like a bunch of cool stuff, like all throughout like university, and like being good, like being happy doing
Yeah.
all this. Like it's like it's I think it's really cool.
Yeah. It definitely is like, and it's so important, right? Because I feel like a lot of the times in at like this age, I mean, at least I can speak for myself. Anytime I make a decision, like you're always making the decision as like you for now,
Yeah.
what if in the future I'm like, oh, why did I do that? But always nice to like come on the other side and be like, no, you know what? Like this is great. Like I love this.
Well, because I have a huge problem with like regretting decision, like either regretting my decisions, or I mostly have issues with regretting not doing something, like having like,
Yes.
and I'm like like shoot, I should have done that.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's I mean it's always an issue having to like make the tough decisions, especially being like a young adult, like kind of shaping like the rest, not the rest of your life, but like a good major part of like the next few years. So it's always like a lot of pressure on yourself.
Yeah. It's super hard because I I mean, like you said, I feel like that's why I'm so indecisive. I don't know if you're indecisive.
So much.
It's always because I like overthink what like the butterfly effect of me making this decision.
Yeah.
Like, but what if this leads to this, and then it leads to this, and then it leads to this, and then I'm not happy. I don't want that. So I totally get you.
No. I mean, especially in I was a little bit like, especially coming out of COVID, I was a little bit more unfortunate with my grades, let's say it like that. So like I always like, especially at that period of my time, I was like, oh man, what if this happens and then it comes out to this and then it like ricochets and I'm like, oh my God, like this is gonna ruin my life.
And yeah, it's so daunting, but I feel like I, or at least this is how I like I try. I don't say I actually do it, but I try to remind myself that like, okay, I feel like we're in such a malleable stage of our life that like you can always go back and like change it, like there's always another decision that can course correct whatever you didn't want to happen.
Yeah. Well, especially with this like our younger generation, like everybody is so indecisive on what they want and they change their minds all the time, and you can see it not only in like just everyday life but just in general with like jobs or like whatever. Like you can see that they like everything's changing all the time, and a lot of people like switch up completely their careers very easily nowadays. So it's kind of like you shouldn't have like that whole pressure of being like, okay, this is gonna be like the rest of my life. Like this is what I'm gonna be doing forever. Like you have to know that this is what you want.
Yeah, I agree. It's easier said than done,
Yeah.
but at least for me, I tend to be pretty stubborn afterwards in my decisions, and I'm like, no, like I made this decision, I need to see it through. Um, but I totally get that. Um, so my next question for you, I want to ask. I mean, I guess I kind of asked it before, but um, how did you imagine yourself at this age when you were younger, and how is that similar or different? Not necessarily like in the like where you got, because I knew that you said that you kind of expected to be far away from home and whatever, but like I'm I wanted to ask more so about like the kind of person that you are. Um, I don't know. I just think that's really interesting, and it's a question that I like tend to ask myself a lot. So I just wanted to hear if that resonates with you or whatever.
Well, I mean, I feel like when you're young, you have a lot of expectations for yourself, especially like those first few years going into like independent lifestyle, like
Mhm.
going off to college and like meeting new people. Um, I mean, I I don't even think I remember what I was thinking at that time. Like it was kind of like it was just like I don't know how to explain it, but just like the whole fact that expectations versus reality is like probably so much different than what was expected, and especially like with like the changing times, how it was at the time, thinking about how you would experience that, and now being like 2024, like actually getting to experience it. I mean, it's
Very different. I don't know if
yeah.
you found it, but I feel like this is a common theme in the end is you always think that you're like when you're younger, you always see people our age much more grown up than like we actually
Oh
are,
my
you
God.
know?
Yeah, I know. I know for a fact that like 11, 12-year-old me would not be worrying so much about grocery prices, you know? Like
Simpler times. But yeah, it's like it's a lot.
Mhm.
But um I actually kind of want to go back to like the whole like living in Canada and the whole Tobogan situation.
Okay.
Um, so like I don't know if you could tell our listeners just like what your life is like in and stuff because I know that you love it so much. And yeah, I thought that you
Well,
speak
I
more.
mean, like a day in my life in Canada.
Sure. Yes.
Well, I mean, it's really one of the things that I love, not about Canada, but mostly Montreal specifically, is that it's very multicultural and specifically like very French, English, like it's a mix between Europe and like the States. And
Hmm.
that's kind of like the best of both worlds for me because like you have still that like authenticity of like I always wanted to keep like having that like French like culture in me, but I spent most of my life in the States, so I can't like completely deny that I'm partially well, I'm not like American at all. Not what I'm trying to say, but like just like I grew
You
up
have it in you, you know?
yeah, exactly. Like I still like I grew up with it. It's like kind of home, so you gotta I like the fact that I can have both at the same time and like not even think about it. Like hear people just like switch from one language to another without even having like people don't flinch. They're like, yeah.
That's so that's like so cool because it just feels like at least like our school, but just on a magnifying.
Yeah, basically. Exactly. Like it's 'cause I remember people like every time I would go like every time either I would speak with somebody who was like American or like English speaking versus some like when I was speaking to like a French person, every time I would try to like concentrate so hard on not switching up the language and here like you're just like whatever, like everybody does it. It doesn't matter.
Yeah. That's so awesome because at the end of the day, I feel like, well, the amount of bilingual people are obviously rising and rising, but I feel like it's such a unique experience to be having like living in this kind of like zombie meshed
Mhm.
culture. And so I feel like having that or being in Montreal is like such a cool
Mhm.
place to be because it's just like that, but for everybody, it's um I think I talked a little bit about it with I was talking with Nada and I've talked about this with Matilda that it's like you're never like when you're with one group of people, for example, if you're with Americans, then it's like you don't have the French part. When you're with French people, it's like you don't have the American part, and then kind of like it's just like you're always kind of missing a part. So I think it's super cool that like there in Montreal, you don't feel like that, you know?
Yeah, well, the great thing about it is Montreal is kind of like a hub for every international student. Like literally I've met so many people that have like that were like me or like you growing up like always traveling like going like having that like those parents that switch up jobs from country to country and so I just find it like really nice to have like that group of people that kind of understand what you went through growing up and having that like same experience type of energy like everybody was like everybody understood what was happening and everybody just met up in Montreal for their university and it was kind of I find that cool.
Yeah. Do you tend to like I don't know about your friends, but do you tend to have like more friends like that or Canadians or
Oh, I have both. I mean, especially like I was saying earlier, especially with the people that I met in engineering, most of them are Canadians. So I know a lot of Canadians from like all over the province, but I also have like my group of friends that are like French or like international, like I was saying earlier, like with like that like kind of European still mentality that Canadians don't have.
what do you think is the biggest difference between Canadians and like the I mean like French Canadians and then like or Quebecois and like the European
Oh
like
my
what is the biggest difference between like those groups of friends?
I don't know, honestly. I mean, it's hard to tell. I mean, between I don't know many people. Like I know a few Quebecois and they're like the sweetest people ever. And I feel like I don't know. French like French Canadian people are just so they're very welcoming. I mean, I know it's a stereotype from especially like French people, but they're like as soon as you step into like the Paris airport, you can see like the change in like setting where it's like everybody hates what they're doing. You are a burden to them, and you're just like, okay.
Have you heard the, is it, um, the like coconut and like avocado society theory?
No.
Okay, so for example, the French is what you would call like the coconut like people, and then for example, Americans and Canadians are more like the avocado, where you have like the soft exterior for the avocado. So like people are more friendly to everybody and more like you can talk to more people, but it's harder to get into the inner circle. But
Mhm.
then French people, it's like they have a harder exterior, but once you're in, you're like deep in, you know?
Yeah, okay, I see. That's interesting. I've never heard that before.
Yeah, I heard that and I was like, wow, that makes a lot of
That
sense.
does make a lot of sense. That's actually a really good like compare.
College. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like that's true. Um, and a
No,
lot of people, but a lot of people would say that that comes across as like fakeness, or like that's what I've heard from like people who honestly who are French. I'll be like, oh, they're so fake on the other.
yeah, I've heard that a lot too, being like Americans. Well, because like they a lot of them will be very sweet to you, like upfront and being like very welcoming and blah blah blah. But like you said, like they have a much harder like interior, so you won't get through them very easily compared to like French people. Like they'll give you a nasty look at the beginning, but you like crack that shell and it's all good.
Yeah. Um, so I wanted to ask you another question. Like we're all kind of in this transitional period, or I mean the 20s are like very transitional. Like we said, you're constantly making decisions and it's so malleable. So I wanted to ask you if there's anything that you are like wanting to overcome in your personal life or looking forward to, just in general.
Oh, well, I mean, graduating. Like well, I don't know. I feel like I've been in university forever, a little bit, but like it's like I've been like waiting to graduate for a while because I'm seeing like so many people around me like having like that end of diploma, going into like their big girl jobs and like just doing like starting their lives, and I'm like, okay, well, like when's my time, like I want to do that.
When are you
But
graduating?
next year.
Okay, May of
May.
next year?
Yeah, May of next year.
Okay, so just one more year.
It's just no, I'm like I'm not like too like trying to speed through it. Like I'm gonna spend like a really good last year and like
Yeah,
with the
you go
math,
all out.
but I am very excited to like
Yeah.
finish.
Do you want to stay in Canada?
I think for now that's the plan. Yeah. I mean, especially with all the experience that I have here
Yeah.
and all of like I was saying like the network that I have here, I think it's best for me. I don't see myself going back like to France, for example, because it's
Oh, you
such
don't?
problem is in my field, if you don't live in like Paris, it's kind of like
I
yeah,
see.
and I don't think I'm very interested in that, or at least not for now.
Hmm.
So, I mean, maybe go back to the States, who knows?
You can meet me in Matilda. We'll be.
Maybe, maybe.
And the other Jade is in now she moved to
Washington, no?
what should we call it? Yeah, somewhere up there. I'm
Somewhere in the
pretty sure it's
that area.
Virginia.
Okay.
Like 90% sure. Because I have friends that also live there.
Oh,
Yeah.
really?
Yeah. My friends from study, two of my friends from study abroad live in Virginia, and
Okay.
one of them lives in Maryland.
Oh,
So now I know four people up there in like the Northeast.
okay.
Yeah.
Oh.
Um, but yeah, I'm so excited for you to graduate and but you gotta like live out your last year.
Oh no, definitely. I'm not gonna waste it in any type of way. Like I'm gonna like this is especially since I don't have like many classes left. Like this is like the time where I can especially like stretch out like all of like the clubs and extracurriculars that I can do and like so I definitely do not want to waste that.
No. When do you start working on your toboggan? I love this about you.
Well, usually right now we're still in like the design process, so it's like the beforehand,
Mm-hmm.
and we're basically gonna start manufacturing in like I think when we go back to school, so like early September-ish.
I gotcha.
'Cause
You're not in classes. Oh yeah, it's summer.
yeah. No, thank God. I'm working, but no classes.
Oh, where are you working in? Just
I'm working right now. So the job that I have this summer is a little different from what I usually have. I'm working basically rotations. So 2 weeks I work like 14 days, 12-hour days, no breaks. And then when I finish those 14 days, I get 14 days of nothing where I just have like a break for 14 days.
that's so nice.
Yeah, it's
What do
really
you do? What do you do like while you're work? It's engineering
Yeah,
stuff.
it's engineering. It's more mining engineering what I'm doing right now. But it's basically going into an iron mine in the northern of Quebec and working on like the residue that comes out because usually when the iron comes out of the mine directly, it's about like 30% pure. Like not pure, but you know what I mean? Like
Hmm.
it's 30% of like iron, and when they send it out to like sell it, it's usually about like I think it's 70%.
Hmm.
So all of that like dirt residue that they have to take off, our job is basically to like reuse it and not recycle it, but basically create like terrain with it and just act as if it was never there.
Interesting. That's so cool that it's like rotational though.
Mm,
Um,
yeah.
so Jade, is there anything else that you want to add or rant about or
I mean, I don't think so. I mean, live out your fullest.
yeah,
Don't be scared to take decisions. Even if you are an indecisive person like us.
exactly. Just make it. You can always go back at some point
Exactly.
and
There's
change it.
always that like rewind button, don't worry.
All right. Well, thank you so much for coming on the podcast, Jade. It was so awesome to have you.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, of course. Okay, so for everyone listening, thank you so much for listening. You can follow us on Aspiring Adult Podcast on Instagram, Aspiring Adult Pod or Podcast on TikTok now. And then you can get this on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube. So thanks so much for listening or watching,
Either or.
either or. And I'll see you guys on the next one. Bye.
Bye.